This is one of the most neglected parts of Aikido, because people, obviously we all have our religions, but in order for us to understand Aikido and to understand why things are done the way they are done, we have to go and understand the process that O-Sensei went through to create Aikido, and his personal experiences and all his learning process. So we saw last week the historical part of it. We mentioned about religion, but we didn't go to the actual principles. So today we're going to the principles, and that's why I wrote like this series, 3 books called Shinken Shobu series. And this one is especially about what we're going to talk today, which is the soul of Aikido. So we are recovering O-Sensei's spiritual vision through history, Shinto cosmogony, Mikkyō, which is the Shingon Buddhism, science, and esoteric practice. So the thesis is, Morihei Ueshiba's spiritual teaching were not decorative additions or senile eccentricities. They were the foundational operating system of Aikido. Remember, I showed the pictures of the Uchideshi students, and I said, well, they're not interested in, they thought it was like some senile eccentricities from O-Sensei, like, okay, the old man is crazy, is talking to spirits and things like that. And actually, they didn't understand that that was like a process, because they met him after the war. Remember, we talked about all the process of softening all the martial arts, not just Aikido, but Aikido suffered more because of the lack of competition. And also, in order to comply with the Shogun MacArthur's rules to keep practicing, and it became more like a cultural allegory and a gymnastics, a cultural gymnastics, that let's go. In Aikido, there's the harmony, there's the key, the energy, and the spiritual path. But we have to understand Aiki first to get here. So people want to get here before they understand what that means. Aikikai, 5th Dan, Technical Director of Ryū Dojo. I'm repeating that for the video part, not, I know you know that. Dan Aikibudo Daishihan, Nihon, Budo Kokusai Mei, the Japanese Budo International Federation, founder of Shinken-ryu, martial arts practitioner since 1979, and Aikido practitioner since 1986. A long time, and that means I'm very old. The reason why this is very important, this is a concept, Bun Bu Ryo Do, which means the pen and the sword in accord. We have to learn the physical techniques, and we also have to learn the way of the pen. The way of the sword is the physical practice, but the way of the pen is religion, philosophy, culture, energy, and everything else. So this is extremely important for us in order to become integral practitioners to follow Bun Bu Ryo Do. And the samurais will do that too, because remember, we have to see things holistically. And for example, when the samurai got to this point, which was, he understood this concept of Budo that started in the Tokugawa era, that was 250 years of peace. He understood how to balance all this energy, this aggressive energy. It had to be balanced in order for people to have mental health. Because you have all this power, this destructive power. You see afterwards there's an actual concept that was created from that. It's called the Katsujinken, which is the sword that gives life. We have to understand Japanese Shinto. Japanese Shinto is the indigenous religion of Japan. but is a religion, but is not a religion. What's a religion? Is a set of beliefs, right? So religion is that too, but it's also a set of things that you do. So in this sense, Shinto means, this means kami, shin, kami. Kami doesn't mean God. It means God, spirit, everything is kami. Not just God, not just deity, but spirits, elemental, everything has a kami. This table has a kami, a tree has a kami, everything has a kami. Aikido has a kami. People can become kamis. So that's what Shinto believes, the way of the kami. And it's not dogmatic. So that's why today you have a perfect blending and combination of syncretism with Buddhism. Because it doesn't have, Shinto doesn't have a dogma. You don't have to believe in something. It's basically observation of nature. And something I always believe, that the unequivocal way to see God and divinity in any way is to look to nature. Because nature is the untouched signature of God. So that's what Shinto believes. The core virtues is the emphasis of harai, the ritual purification, which is something very important for Aikido too. Makoto, sincerity of heart, and living in natural harmony. Kanagara is the flux of nature. When you understand nature and you live in, because now we have such a technological might that we are apart from nature more and more. And that's causing a lot of problems to us. Because, obesity is one of them. There's a lot of things that our consciousness in our technological progress brought us to a point that we are no longer dependable. Not dependable, we depend on nature, but what I mean by dependable is we are not so much in touch with nature, to the point that we are blessed in California to have a beautiful state that we can go to the beach, we can go to the mountains, we can go like 20, 30-minute drive, you can see and be in touch with beautiful nature. And that's actually the mentality of the Californian, is to live with that contact of nature. But if you go to New York, for example, it's very hard. You're living in this concrete jungle, and you're just obsessed with money, with work. You lost this, you forget to breathe, you forget about everything. So that's the kanagara that is missing from this urban, excessive life. Then they have a lot of shrine traditions, go into community rituals, seasonal agricultural rites. I mean, all the indigenous religions have to do with the crops and fertility, not just crops fertility, but also human fertility. And one of the main things for you to recognize a Shinto site is the tori. The tori is this art that signifies that you're entering the spiritual world when you go into it. And what I said in the beginning, coexistence, historically blended harmoniously with Buddhism through the syncretic framework of Shinbutsu Shugo. So they live together. There's even a saying in Japan that is, you go to the wedding, a Shinto wedding and a Buddhist funeral. So it's so combined that you can live with both without any problems. And that's why our dojo here allows us to put a Shinto shrine in a Buddhist temple. So it's perfectly in harmony. Let's understand Buddhism. This is general, because the same as Christianity, if you understand human nature, because remember, religion is not God in my humble conception. Religion is our way to reach the divine, our way to understand the divine. So obviously, it gets to a point that we all agree with the initial idea, but time passes and then we start finding disagreements. So we started with all agreeing with something, and then 10 years from now, you already had second thoughts, and you said, oh, you know what? So then each one of us create a different reading of that same original idea, and that's why we have thousands of different religions, the different manifestations of all religions. Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, all of them, Hinduism. The core principles, this is the most important things that you have in all Buddhism. The Four Noble Truths, which is life involves suffering, which is dukkha in Sanskrit. Origin is craving, attachment is the poisons of the mind, fear, ignorance. Cessation is possible, nirvana, and path that leads to liberation. But what is actually suffering? Do you know what suffering is? Yeah, we all went through suffering, right? But what if I told you the Buddha said that suffering, let's say 95% of suffering is illusion. But you might say, well, when I feel pain, when I'm sad, that's not an illusion. I said, yeah, physical pain and all these things are real, obviously. However, I can give you an example about suffering. Let's say if you have a dream of having a car, like a Rolls Royce, and you don't have the money, but you always, every time you see a Rolls Royce, social media, a magazine, TV, or passing in front of you, you suffer because you said, you know, I want that, and I don't have it, right? So we suffer. Then one day you win the lottery, or you're able to gather the money, you finally buy the Rolls Royce. But you still suffer because now you're afraid that they're going to scratch it, that they're going to steal it. Yeah. So if you don't have it, you suffer. If you have it, you suffer. So that's called, this principle calls the ocean of suffering. So everything can become an element of suffering. Like if you are in love with this woman, let's say, you look at her and she doesn't look at you, and then you suffer because you want her and you don't have her. But then one day, she wants to be with you, but then you are afraid of losing her. So it's always suffering. If you're not always paying attention and understanding that there are things that are out of your control, you are going to suffer for everything. Universal marks, all compounded things are impermanent, anicca, inherited and unsatisfactory, dukkha, back to suffering, and devoid of fixed eternal self, anatta. We could talk 5 hours about this self thing. Jiddu Krishnamurti, which was Hindu thinker, someone asked him what was enlightenment. And then he said, well, we all experience like fragments of enlightenment during our lifetime. For example, when you look this beautiful mountain or this beautiful waterfall, and for a second, nothing else exists but that. You forgot who you are, your name, your preferences, everything. And there's only that. That awe. It's an awe. You look to that mountain, look to that flower, you look to that waterfall. You are in awe. That's one kind of enlightenment, one way of taste enlightenment. And that's a moment that your anatta, your self, disappears. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a personality. Your personality is who you are. The problem is using the personality when the personality becomes I'll give you an example. I'm a heterosexual man. So I like women. That's who I am. I don't have to, let's say, suppress that. I can be myself. I can be heterosexual. I can like women. The problem is When this bias, let's call, makes me judge or treat people bad because they don't have the same preference that I have. You understand how this self can become a problem? But I don't have to abandon it. And even one of the most important things about Buddhism is the middle way. So that's what, when the Buddha, he was trying to live an ascetic life, not showering, eating like bird crap or seeds. That he was like, for 6 years, he was trying to reach enlightenment through ascetic, to making his body suffer. And he realized that that was not the way. The way was the middle way. So you shouldn't make your body suffer, and the same thing, you shouldn't indulge your body in pleasures and things, otherwise you can get lost in that too. So it's the middle way, is the balance of both. And then you have the Eightfold Path. It's right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and the concentration. Cultivates wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline. I studied Buddhism since 1997. I could go on and on and on about Buddhism, but I just want you to understand the basic concepts of Buddhism, because even if you don't become a Buddhist, you can apply that in your life. Because the Buddha never talked about God. But in my opinion, he never talked about God, because Buddhism has this, you are accountable for the things you do. So if you are always trusting that a God is going to save you, or a God is going to interfere, or something like that, you are not accountable for what you do. That's why you have the concept of karma. What I do, if it's good, I get credits. If it's bad, I get bad credits, let's call. So that's the principle of karma, and that's very rational. It's more rational than the Judeo-Christian traditions, that you just have to accept why a person is born without a leg, why one is born rich and the other poor. Buddhism believes in rebirth. It's not reincarnation, how it's called in Buddhism. And that can explain, well, that person did something in a past life. I'm not saying that's true because I cannot prove it, but it's a lot more logical than saying, well, that's a mystery, that why God made this guy ugly and this other guy good looking, why he's rich and this other person is poor, why he's poor and happy and the other guy is rich and sad. But karma can explain that. As I said, there are many different ways of Buddhism. And the Theravada is the most, let's say, basic one. And when I say basic, I don't want to be pejorative when I call basic, but it's the simplest one. And the simple sometimes is better than too sophisticated. And I believe that religion, that's one of the greatest problems about religion, is trying to impose. Because it's good for me, I try to impose for you. I can say, listen, I found solace and comfort in this religion. If you're interested, I'm happy to introduce you to the idea. But it's something very personal. And my theory is our personalities form up to when we are 7 years old. Our science already knows that. So you are kind of imprinted with your religion and with a lot of other things. But it's very hard for you to go away from what you learn up to when you were 7 years old. So usually people keep their religions, that the family, that their environment presented to them, they keep it. The Theravada Buddhism is the Buddhism you find in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. It's usually, they use either yellow or orange robes. And they are very based on the Pali Canon, strictly on the earliest recorded Buddhist scriptures as a definitive doctrine. It's like the Synoptic Gospels version of Buddhism. So it's only the early earliest teachings. Monastic focus. The monastic Sangha is the central practice, keeping strict adherence to the Vinaya disciplinary code, which means it's an apostolic life. They focus on the apostolic life. The Arhat ideal. This is very important because it's the main difference. What's the Arhat ideal? The ultimate spiritual goal is reaching individual enlightenment. They call Arhatship. And escaping the wheel of rebirth. So the goal is by getting enlightened, you no longer have to come rebirth and suffer, rebirth and suffer, rebirth and suffer. The thing is, the Arhat sees, okay, the world, we have a word of illusion. This word is bad. So what I want to do is I want to be ejected from this. So I want to get enlightened and get the hell out of here. That's the way of the Arhat. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but that's so you can understand better. I don't care about the others. I care about myself, and I want to samsara, the world of illusion. This world is bad. The physical is bad. Rebirth is bad. I want to become a saint and disappear. Then you have Mahayana, the great vehicle. Hinayana is the small vehicle, which the Theravada Buddhism becomes. And then you have Mahayana. And then you have Vajrayana, which is the Tibetan Buddhism that is going to talk next. Mahayana has the Bodhisattva ideal. So what's the Bodhisattva ideal? Is thinking, okay, I want to be enlightened, but I also want my father to be enlightened. I want my son to be enlightened. I want my friend to be enlightened. I want all beings to be enlightened. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get very close to enlightenment and then help all the other beings to reach enlightenment. So that's the Bodhisattva ideal. So my individual liberation is important, but I want to save the whole universe. And also teaches you shunyata, or mushi in Japanese, which is the emptiness of inherent existence. And this is very important, that the Tathagata Garbha, which is the innate potential of full Buddhahood within all living beings. So an ant has potential to become a Buddha. We have a potential to become a Buddha. All of us. Adolf Hitler had a potential to become a Buddha. We all had the potential. That doesn't mean that we will become a Buddha. Because bad karma, negative karma create obscurations. So even the worst person in the world has the essence of God, the essence of Buddhahood. But we create bad karma. So Hitler was a monster, a terrible person, because he had according to Buddhism, he had so many obscurations that he could not see his Buddhahood. He could not recognize his divine essence. But he had it. We all have it. And then you see the Mahayana in China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. We have to understand the concept of Tantra. So Tantra, the reason why we have Budo, the reason why we have the way of spiritual refinement through the martial way, to the way of war, is because of a concept of Tantra. I mentioned en passant last week, which means to weave or to expand. Tantra refers to advanced esoteric or spiritual technologies that utilize energy, ritual, and symbolic form. Rather than renouncing mundane reality, tantric practice transforms sensory experiences, emotions, and subtle bodily energies into immediate tools for spiritual awakening using mantra, sound, mudra, gesture, and mandala, the sacred geometry. Examples of Tantra: sex, war, tea, flower arrangements, gardening, bonsai, pretty much every mundane activity. So you can reach enlightenment using, remember, the Arhat said, no, physical is bad, we need to get out of here. So the concept of Tantra says, no, we can use that as a tool. You can find wisdom everywhere you look if you know how to find, and you can find enlightenment everywhere you look if you know how to process this methodology. So here we have a representation of Samantabhadra, is a Tibetan Tanka, the primordial Buddha. And you see like a sexual tantric, it's called Yab-yun, embrace. So he has a Shakti, which is the feminine consort, but this doesn't mean sex. That means divine, let's call magical, like musubi. When you get positive and negative, this is the Tao. It's the same thing. It's the combination of positive and negative, yin-yang, male and female, and so on. Vajrayana. So we had the Vinayana, which is the Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana, which is Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and then we have Vajrayana, which is the Tibetan Buddhism, which is a diamond vehicle. Vajra is a diamond, and it's diamond because it uses as analogy to the diamond is indestructible. So that's the reason why this is the indestructible and rapid path to awakening. Because Buddhism believes that you need many lifetimes to become a Buddha. The Vajrayana method says, no, you can reach in this lifetime if you follow the protocols. So he combines the Mahayana philosophy with the Tantric techniques to achieve complete Buddhahood in a single lifetime. Deity yoga, visualizations, practitioners visualize themselves as enlightened deities to dismantle habitual ego clinging and realize innate purity. So you see yourself as the deity in a visualization practices in order to get rid of your negative self. Remember the anatta that we said that might interfere? All of our biases. By visualizing ourselves as the deity doesn't mean that we are becoming the deity in the sense of necessarily powers. That can happen, but that's a different conversation. Here is just you see yourself removing all the obscurations that make you, the bad biases. So the ego that is bad. Guru lineage transmission relies heavily on direct oral transmission and initiation, empowerment from a qualified spiritual master, Lama, Acharya. What that means, I was initiated in Tibetan Buddhism. I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, but I was initiated in Tibetan Buddhism in 1997. In all these teachings, you have to receive an empowerment. You have to participate in a ceremony when the guru, the teacher, allows you, gives you permission to practice that particular ritual. So I receive many empowerments. So I cannot perform the rituals and teachings and techniques that I didn't receive the empowerment. I can only practice the ones I got. So that's how it works. And relies strongly, heavily in the teacher. So you, for example, when you decided to become a Buddhist, you have to take what's called refuge. You take a refuge on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, meaning the teacher, the guru, the Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the community. Subtle energy practices harnesses subtle channels, nadi, energy points, chakra, and vital winds, prana, to advanced yogi disciplines. So you have a lot of esoteric practices that make you access energies and teachings that you can more rapidly understand and get enlightenment. This is the symbol, this is the Vajra, the indestructible power of wisdom in Buddhism. This has an analogy with the diamond, as I said, and with the thunder, lightning. So that's why it's quick and powerful as a lightning. Oh, this is Guru Rinpoche, which in the 8th century introduced Buddhism to Tibet. He was known as the second Buddha. You have the first Buddha was the Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha Shakyamuni. And then you have Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava. He was also a prince. And legend says he was born in the lotus flower. That's why his name is Padmasambhava or Padmasambhava, the one born from the lotus. And this is a statue of the monastery that he founded. It's a huge statue. And when he saw it, he said, yeah, it looks like me. So we probably, because we have like Tibetan face, he was like from India, not from Tibet, but you see he has features like Tibetan here, but he was. And then you have Zen. Zen is one of the most famous Buddhist practices especially in the West, and obviously was developed in Japan. Beyond words and letters, Chan or Zen, Chan in Chinese, is a Mahayana, back to Mahayana practice, originated in China, Chan, and perfected in Japan, emphasizing direct transmission outside scriptures. Zazen practice, silent seated meditation, Zazen, serves as a primary gateway to experience one's true nature. The purpose is that you are always in silence, you're meditating, and you are paying attention to your own, you're trying to, by doing that, recognize your Buddha nature, your true nature, let's call. Koan and Satori uses paradoxes, koans, to bypass rational mind limitations, leading to sudden realization, Satori. There's a lot of exercises using logic so you can bypass the biases of your mind to understand the teachings. Aesthetic integration, they're very much neat. When you see, there are two different approaches that in my opinion are very valid. There's a very minimalist, when you go to a Zen temple or monastery, is a very minimalist. When you go to a Tibetan one, it's colorful, it's full of gold, there's like more esoteric and mystical. This is more apostolic, more minimalist. And again, different people might prefer different approaches, but in essence, the goal is the same. So you have influence tea ceremony, calligraphy, rock garden, martial arts, via simplicity and presence. So now we are starting to touch Morihei Ueshiba about his influences. So O-Sensei was not a Zen practitioner. His Buddhism was childhood Shingon, which is going to go very deep later. And his adult faith was Shinto Ōmoto-kyō. We saw Shinto now. In Ōmoto-kyō, we saw a little bit last week, but we're going to go back in a second. Valid concepts inherited. The culture of Japanese swordsmanship passed down crucial psychological terms. Mushin, no mind, unstuck mind. We're going to revisit that. Fudoshin, the immovable mind, composure under threat, which means when you see the two Vajras, when you see two Vajras, it means indestructible mind in a Tibetan tradition, and it means in Japanese Fudoshin. In Zanshin, remaining awareness after action, you're always alert. This is very important too. So all of that is very important to martial arts. In 806, this gentleman here, his name is Kukai, was later on known as Kobodaishi. He founded this tradition called Shingon Buddhism. What is Shingon? Shingon is a Vajrayana tradition. It's like this, almost the same as the Tibetan tradition. So I didn't study much Shingon, but since I studied a lot of Tibetan, it's very easy for me to recognize the patterns and understand. Shingon means the true word. The kanji, Shin is the same of Shinken, the true. There's a correlation of Tantra, obviously, and war. Remember, talk about Tantra. Okay, you can, through practices, mundane activities, you can reach enlightenment. Shingon provided Ueshiba with his foundation technology of consciousness and the understanding that sound, breath, gesture, and movement act directly upon ultimate reality. So you can manipulate reality. That's what this concept means. So Mikkyō is another way of understanding. So again, it was brought from China to Japan in the 19th century by Kobodaishi. Contrast with Zen. Unlike Zen, an adorned austerity, Shingon is a Baroque, highly ritualized and somatic path to enlightenment. Remember I said Zen is extremely minimalist, Vajrayana, Tibetan, and Shingon, very rich. Sokushin Jōbutsu, becoming a Buddha in this very body, rejects the idea that enlightenment requires rebirths over lifetimes. The physical body is the alchemical crucible for liberation. So it's like we got this vehicle, which is our physical body, and we have to use that to reach enlightenment. It's not like, okay, I have to get rid of it. I have to become ascetic and get rid of it. No, you use that as a vehicle because it's very hard for you. And you go to extreme, which is against Buddhism. If you do like this, you know, you don't eat, you don't do anything, you just meditate. So that's not the middle way. The Sanmitsu, the three mysteries. This is also very important for martial arts. In Shingon, enlightenment is accessed by unifying human action with cosmic action through three physical doors. The body, the mudra. The mudra, you have all this different hand divine gestures that affect the chakras, that affect your energy and affect your mind. There are actually sciences studying them. And you have the mantra, which is speech, the sacred seed sounds, Kotodama, the Shingon, vibrating through the body, harmonizing individual and cosmic resonance. So again, science is already looking to frequencies. We know everything is frequency. Tesla said that. Everything is electricity, everything is frequency. So we know by now that meditating, for example, doing Om, has scientific positive consequences. Meditation, mindfulness is even prescribed by doctors today because we know scientifically that works. And the mind, mandala, intense visualization, training focus, attention, and absorbing ego into cosmic order. Then you have these deities that you look at them, you say, okay, this looks like a demon. So anyone that doesn't understand what this means, we think, oh, this is a demon. But it's not a demon. This is the wrathful deities of Vajrayana Buddhism. This is a Fudomyo. And is a protector deity. And all this rage is not against anyone, is against, remember when we talk about the ignorance, fear, attachment. So this is why he is pissed. He is attacking our vices, our obstacles to reach enlightenment. And this is a sword of wisdom, and he has also a lasso. This is a representation of the enlightened mind, and you have many Buddhist deities like Manjushri, for example, with the Bodhisattva of wisdom, that he holds a sword, is to cut your attachment, to cut your ignorance, to cut your illusion. You have some deities that are stepping on other people, but these people are not people. These people are fear, anger, all these poisons that prevent us from reaching enlightenment. Ōmoto-kyō. We talked about Ōmoto-kyō last week, but now we have to go deeper. So these two people here, Onisaburo Deguchi and Nao Deguchi, they were not related. They adopted each other's names. They founded Ōmoto-kyō. Ōmoto-kyō is neo-Shintoism. It got elements of Shinto, and it has like for example, dealt with kamis, with the spirits, divination, Shinto-derived let's call new religion, Shinto. And believe in art as a social harmony. View arts as the mother of religion. Art is the mother of faith. Promotes world peace, environmental care, and social justice. So art, and I believe that, because it doesn't matter where you're from. If you listen to music, for example, it touches you. If it's a beautiful song, it's going to touch. You don't have to even understand the lyrics, but if the melody, it touches you somehow. A painting, you don't have to be an art critic. You look at a beautiful painting, it touches you. You connect. It promotes world peace, environmental care, and social justice. Protect the environment. We're not better than anybody. We're all the same. Inclusive monotheism teaches Bankyo Dokon. All religions originate from one supreme divine source. Promotes Esperanto and interfaith dialogue. So this is very important because that's what I was talking to you before the lecture starts. My understanding of religion, after I started researching that when I was 11 years old, so it's almost 42 years, wrote 30 books about religion, 50 papers. And my conclusion is this: our ordinary mind cannot understand extraordinary God. So the extraordinary God is beyond we cannot understand, let's say, something that has no beginning. Can you understand something that has no beginning? No. Because our mind understands things that have a beginning and an end. So, my way of seeing God is, I believe in this, one supreme divine source. And then you have all these archetypes, like the old master, the hero. If you study Joseph Campbell, he talks about all these motifs that are present in all different cultures all over the world, and cultures that never communicated. So the mother and the baby, the virgin, we have all these motifs happening in all different cultures all over the world, because this is something that we connect as humans. So the same thing with God. Our way to decipher, to understand this energy, is to give it a face, is to give it a story, is to give it an archetype. So that's why we believe in a Virgin Mary, in Jesus, or some believe in old God with beard, because these are ways that we can understand something that it cannot be understood. So that's, in my opinion, is the origin of all religions. And you have miracles in all religions, you have saints in all religions, so it doesn't depend on, if you say, okay, there's only one religion that is right, so how come you have miracles in all religions? There's no explanation. And it's something very interesting, because in Brazil, if you Google it, there is a gentleman that is known as John of God. You know that, right? So John of God, for 50 years or 40 years or something, he healed over 50,000 people. 50,000. Some people have the tests. I have a tumor here, and now I don't have a tumor anymore. Many of the cases. But we realize now that the guy was a rapist and a criminal. All these years he's been abusing people that went there. He even tried to kill someone, according to some documentaries. So the guy was not a nice person. So how come he has this power? How come he was able to kill? Was it the devil? No. The explanation is very simple. The combination of the person and this guy was facilitating the energy of this person to connect with something. It doesn't matter if he was a nice person or not. He was able to make this connection. So that's why people got cured, even though he was a charlatan as a person. the miracles were real. So it doesn't matter, because religion is about your connection, your consciousness connection with the divine. Everything else is a story we create. And then obviously later we abuse this story to control, to make money, to get power, to destroy other people. And that's the things that should be filtered out. For example, I personally don't believe that Jesus would ever say, I'm the only path to God. Because it's inconsistent with everything else he said. He was the all-inclusive guy. You know, he used to hang around with the prostitutes, with the misfits. So, makes no sense. So if you analyze things, I don't want to enter in Christianity here, but if you analyze things logically, you see that Jesus would never say something like that. But that was characterized. So, okay, so if you want to reach God, you have to come to me. If you don't, you go to hell. And it's not nice, I've heard. And since death has very staggering statistics, of every person that is born, one person dies, you know, I would consider hell, if I don't want to go to hell, so I better follow you because you are the one that represents Jesus. You understand? That's a tool of control. That's not, in my opinion, in my understanding, in my interpretation, what Jesus wanted and said. But that's, if you want to know more about that, I'll be happy to explain to you. So, Shinto, Onisaburo and Aodeguchi, Morihei Ueshiba, and then many lineages were created, like Seicho no Ie, the Messianic Church. There are many things that came from the Ōmoto-kyō. The historical context and dual myth. Let's examine the verifiable life of Morihei Ueshiba in separating contemporary archival records from later institutional mythology. He was born in 1883 in Tanabe. In early life, he is in touch with a lot of violence because of his father, and he meets in 1915 Sokaku Takeda in Hokkaido, and studies Daitō-ryū Aikido, and he got the Kyoju Dairi in 1922, which is a permission to teach, an instructor's permission, because back then, many masters, they didn't have this curriculum, let's call belts and dans. That was all created by, or codified by Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo. So they have different ways of certifying practitioners. So they had certification authority, and then the final one was called Menkyo Kaiden, and Sokaku Takeda never gave the Menkyo Kaiden to Morihei Ueshiba, so he was not his favorite student. In 1920, personal tragedy, he loses his father and 2 infant sons in a single year. He went to Ayabe and joined Ōmoto-kyō. So he has like this tragedy, and that's usually when a person goes to looking for a religion or a system of philosophy when it's confronted by something extreme. Because until nothing happens, you usually keep your own religion that you got from your parents. But once you have a tragedy, and that religion, that philosophy doesn't explain what is going on with you satisfactorily, you need to go ahead and go to a different path, or sometimes you go even deeper in that same religion. Sometimes you look for something better for you. 1924 Mongolian expedition with Onisaburo Deguchi faces gunfire and near execution. So he went to, this was like a huge adventure, and I think a movie would be amazing. And I believe the O-Sensei killed people too in this trip. In 1925 he had like an enlightenment, a kind of enlightenment. He started understanding nature, because of his search, and he ended up having this experience that he felt this golden energy coming to his body. And you see, even after this, in 35, he has the Kobukan Hell Dojo. In 1935, the Ōmoto-kyō was suppressed because they were like very subversive, let's call. But Hell Dojo, he had a mystical experience here. He studied a lot of spiritual, let's call it spiritual stuff, but he still was very strict. In Japanese, it's called kibishi, very strict, to the point that his dojo was known as the Hell Dojo. 42 to 69 is the phase that we are all more familiar with. He withdrew to Iwama, the Aikijinja, the temple of Aikido. Is in a rural area, while his son stayed in Tokyo, in the Hombu Dojo, in the headquarters of Aikikai. He was living this, is not like a hermit life, but kind of planting, and he was teaching there to a select group of people. And sometimes he'll come to Tokyo to teach too. But then that phase, he was more spiritual, more focusing on spiritual stuff. So you see by here that it was not something, he was like martial arts here, and then suddenly he realized something and he was like just spiritual. No, that's not what happened. And that proves my point, that you need both combined. Sokaku Takeda, remember, he was known as the little demon of Aizu, because he was come from this noble lineage, the Aizu clan, the Takeda samurai lineage. Remember, I showed you last week Takeda Shingon, and it all goes back to Minamoto no Yoshimitsu, the prince that codified and created Aikijujutsu, Daitō-ryū. He was the greatest influence to O-Sensei. O-Sensei said, oh my God, this guy has this perfect technique, but he has no peace of mind. He's always afraid of being attacked. He's always cooking his own food because he's afraid of being poisoned. So I don't want that. I want just his power and his expertise, but I don't want that he would sleep with weapons, trust no one. It was like someone that is always paranoid. So why living like that? So that's the reason why O-Sensei got to the spiritual balance of it. So back to Shingon, this is O-Sensei young. He's very influenced by the esoteric chants and practices. That was very important because that was the foundation which the Ōmoto-kyō was built on. So his spiritual message has a little bit of both. Onisaburo Deguchi was very influential to O-Sensei. The religious view, the Shinto, substracal presence of purity, kami, misogi, washing away, practice purifies present. Misogi is purifying. You have a misogi, I'm going to show you later, with water, and Aikido is also a misogi because you're purifying yourself. So all practices that of purification are known as misogi. That influenced a lot, and especially the sense of world peace, preservation of nature. That is something very present in O-Sensei. Kotodama, the sacred seed sounds, norito, mantra, that all the same principle, vocalization, creating a frequency, creating a vibration that is going to affect you and you can affect the others. Remember we talk about the kiai? Kiai is one way of mantra. You are affecting a person, but with a different goal. So this is extremely important, and that's what people seem to forget. Shugyo, austere forging and training. So the body, remember the tantra, body is the vehicle. So you have to do all you can to use your body more diligently possible. You have to, you should not go beyond your limit, but you should go usually to the limit. To the limit, that's the shugyo. Takigyo, cold water, waterfall purification, that's the misogi of cold water. Tanren, high volume, high sincerity, martial repetition. That's training, 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 training. Repeat, 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 repeat. But people just do this. Aikido today is just this. It's just repetition of technique without understanding. Life as a practice, extending discipline of cushion and mat. So It has to go beyond the meditation. It has to go beyond the tatami. It has to go to your life. You have to apply Aikido to your life. So unfortunately, this lecture today, I'm not going to talk much about ki, and I'm not going to talk much about philosophy. We're going to need another lecture, because I cannot, this is already very complex, and if I have to, 1 hour and a half for this is really compacted. But you have to understand, and you have to put Aikido in your daily life. So that's if you are Budoka, if you want a Budo, you have to refine yourself through the martial way. You have to understand that everything you're training has repercussions and consequences in your actual life. Shingon and Shugyo. When Shingo esotericism meets Shugyo, martial arts cease to be about overcoming an external opponent and become an engine for inner transformation. So this is the point now. This is the point when you say, okay, I mastered this, and now that's becoming a tool for me to become a better person. The body is an altar, forging consciousness, unbroken path. So all of these elements, physical technique become an embodied prayer. So then but first you have to master how to actually use it for fighting. Then gets to a point that you say, okay, this is it, but this is also a prayer, a body prayer. Forging consciousness, using physical trial to build non-reactivity and presence. So remember I talk about feeling, sensitivity. Sometimes, this is like, as I said, it's amazing with me. I can feel when a car is going to do something wrong. I can feel, because I'm using the physical trial to build my consciousness, the sensitivity. The person's going to do that, so I better don't do that. I better not say that, because I feel that some bad thing may happen from that. Unbroken path. Shingon provides the map, unity of body, speech, and mind. So this is the Misogi I mentioned to you. Like, you go under a waterfall, and is a ritual purification. You wash the entire body. When you go to a Shinto temple, you have to wash your hands and your mouth before entering. But if you want a real purification, this is the... And O-Sensei said Aikido is Misogi too. Because you're, by the technique, you're scrubbing away ego, fear, and pride. This is an allegory of Misogi. Remember I mentioned, let's say this is our Buddha nature. So you can barely see that this is a diamond, because it's full of obscurations, ignorance, fear, attachment, ego. The Misogi is your washing, either with water or meditation or Aikido, martial arts, religion, anything. It's not just one thing. You can use any methods. All the paths get to the top of the mountain. It becomes, slowly you show your real divine nature, divine spark, Buddha nature, any way you want to call. Is there in you. You are worthy. You are as connected to God, as connected to the Buddhahood as anyone, any being, anything. You just have to polish. You have to recognize that. That's why religion comes from religare, which means reconnect. Because we forgot that we have this inside us. So we reach a God that is far away in heaven, when God is right here. So that's how this is interpreted. That's the analogy. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying I believe that's true, but you don't have to believe it. Tantra and war, the birth of Budo. Then remember, the Tantra, the war provided the supreme existential pressure, Shinken Shobu, that feeling that you might die. And you see how spiritual Shinken Shobu is? Because it's a lesson that you are here now, but you, in a moment, you can die. And you are a doctor, you know how easy an aneurysm can kill you. You are, well, today everything is fine, and you have an aneurysm and you die. And I remember one of my masters used to say, if you knew that you would certainly die in a week, would you live differently? Yeah, right? Yeah. You do a lot of, you try to fix a lot of things, you try to. So why don't you live like that right now? Because you don't know if you're going to live the next 5 minutes. Impermanence. So Shinken Shobu is the ultimate lesson of impermanence, because even though you know that you might die at any second, that's not something, you cannot feel it. But when someone is trying to kill you, you can feel it. It might come right now. So that's the lesson. And Tibetan Buddhism teaches something very interesting, that, for example, if you got a terminal disease diagnosis, you might think, oh, that's the end, that's terrible, right? But Tibetan Buddhism says, no, that might be a chance for you to see life as it really is. Because we put things that, okay, it's important for me to have the latest iPhone. I want to have like many followers on my social media. I want to do this. I want to have like a Louis Vuitton purse. I want to do that. That's not what is meaningful. It's okay to have it if that's not enslaving you, if that's not something that makes you suffer, if it's not something that makes you act different. It's okay to enjoy things. Remember, middle way. I love nice things. It's fine to love nice things, as long as they don't slave you, as long as they don't make you live a different life from that pushes you away from what really matters. And when you get a terminal disease diagnosis, there's no longer Louis Vuitton, there's no longer iPhone, there's no longer social media. Is you facing, is a Shinken Shobu. You are facing your end. And that is a moment that you understand life. You said, my God, I've been so stupid. This is what's important. You understand? That becomes a mirror that reflects the real meaning of life. Sanmitsu as a battlefield technology. Remember the Sanmitsu, the three ways, the body, speech, and mind. So these are the mudras, we mentioned about it. The gestures used by warriors to stabilize autonomic state before engagement. You know, this is like, this is the flying lotus. And then you have many other that they help your mind. And again, science is already studying it. The mantra, chanting sounds, the mind, the mandala, visualizing protected deities to absorb individual ego and cosmic order. Feudal warriors utilize tantric sanmitsu to silence the inner critic and to enter total present moment awareness on the battlefield. So they need to come back, and they use these tools to help them. Then the mantra in Kotodama, this is Norito. O-Sensei would every day to chant Norito, and many of the Uchideshi, the students that learned from him, they said they hated that. They hated to wake up like 4 a.m. and go to recite this Shinto prayers that O-Sensei would love doing it. It's the same principle of the mantra. This is very important. From jutsu, killing, to do, self-realization. We have two swords in the Japanese tradition. Okay? The Satsujinken, that is the sword that kills, that takes life, and you have Katsujinken, that is the sword that gives life. This is what I call meta-constructivism. Meaning, even if you do something destructive in a constructive way, it has a positive outcome. For example, If I kill you now, that's not okay. That's a terrible thing, it's a destructive thing, brings all kinds of bad things. But if there's someone coming here trying to kill you and I kill that person, I'm killing to preserve your life. So it's the sword that gives life. So that's the difference. Then you start understanding the tatami as a mandala. So O-Sensei fused Shingon, Misogi, mantra, Daitō-ryū, Ōmoto-kyō, the universalism into Aikido. So Aikido is the mix of all these things we'll be talking about. This is a very important, I even wrote a book about Katsujinken because I believe we have binary minds usually. So we think we can only be a pacifist or a warrior. We cannot have something in the middle. And Katsujinken is the middle. So when Satsujinken, the destructive sword says, destroy an opponent, that's every time I talk about Shinken Shobu, people think I'm talking about Satsujinken. No, I'm talking about Katsujinken. Because Aikido it's Katsujinken. Aikido is not an aggressive martial art. It's a defensive martial art. So I'm only going to destroy you. We're going to see that later. It's a mirror that mirrors if you want to try to kill me, you might get killed. But because I'm mirroring your action, not because I want to kill you. Katsujinken brings preservation and reconciliation. Satujinken is dualistic conflict, ego-driven, binary mind. This is only good or bad. It's us against them. Polarization is what we see in our society today. Whereas Katsujinken is non-dual protective intention. We can all coexist in peace. We don't have to agree about everything. It's good and healthy if we disagree, but in a constructive way. How can we make this work? Not like if zero-sum thinking. The only way of me winning is if you lose. We can both win, and that's the Aikido proposal. The tactical outcome produces defeat, enemy plus grievance, zero-sum. I win, you lose. But this is an illusion because there's no winners in a war. Tell me one war that has a winner. There's no war that has winner. You only have the side that loses less. But here's we resolve threat and ends the cycle, the vicious cycle of violence, of fear, of anger, of grievance. So the Tokugawa period, which is the 250 years that we had no more wars in Japan, brought that reflection. So you created a philosophical pivot in this life-giving sword. This is what Budo means. But again, it doesn't mean being weak. It's still a sword. It gives life, but it's still a sword. I want to talk about compassion because Buddhism also focuses a lot on compassion. So why compassion is important? Compassion is not a religious concept or a philosophical concept. That's the very reason why we are here. Why human beings became the dominant species in the planet. Okay, some people say, well, because they're able to make tools and weapons, right? But the Neanderthals also did that. They had everything we had, but they were extremely more powerful, extremely stronger. We are a very fragile ape. Go shirtless. That's why when I watch Rambo, remember Rambo 2? Oh, right. That he goes like shirtless to the jungle. Like in 5 minutes you had all kinds of insects, and if you pass through a branch and you're going to get scratched and stuff. So we are the most fragile ape. So how come we got here? The Neanderthals could kick our butts, forgive my French. How come we are here?
Also the mind was
Compassion. We figured out a way of, instead of killing the weaker, we developed this, no, let's save the weaker. Let's risk our lives and save the weaker. Let's protect the weaker. So this is something hardwired in us. So that's why I say, when some people say, oh, we are all sinners. Yes, we are all sinners. We have a potential to do terrible things. But we are innately good. And I always use this example in the Second World War, when the Nazis, they wanted to eliminate the Jews. And in the beginning, they were shooting the Jews. It's called a coup de grace. They were shooting the back of the head. But with time, the soldiers that were doing the job started to develop psychological problems. So the generals, they said, okay, let's get the most bloodthirsty soldiers from the front and have them perform the executions. And then they brought all these people. But also with time, they started developing psychological problems too. So we are good by nature. We have the terrible potential to do bad, and we do it every time we need to survive. We have tribalism, we are selfish, we have a lot of problems. We are flawed, definitely, but we are innately good. In my proof, I wouldn't even call it evidence, is the fact that I don't care where in the world you go, you are not killed instantly. It's not impossible for you to go out of a house or anywhere. We mostly have 10% of people that commit, give or take, that commit, as you say it in Latin, mutatis mutandis, give or take, changing in a different society. How many people are responsible for violent crimes? But it's not more than 10%. And then we have like up to 5% of people that are psychopaths, violent mental problems, something like that. So 90% of the people are good people. They just want to get by. They're not saints. They do bad stuff daily, but they're not evil. So my point in that for another conversation, that stupidity is the problem. And stupidity is not ignorance, because we're all ignorant about something. Stupidity is your laziness to think. You decide to adopt a package that is part of your identity. Let's say if you're conservative, you're going to defend emotionally what conservative says. And if you are progressive, you're going to defend. So you don't evaluate the ideas idea by idea, concept by concept. You just adopt a package and defend it emotionally. So that's stupid. So we're all ignorant about something. That's not. So the problem is, and that was also from this theologian and thinker called Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was captured by the Nazis and executed, but he said, well, the German people are not bad. How come they let Hitler take the country and they are okay with everything that's going on? They are okay of watching. They say that they didn't know about the concentration camps, but let's talk about what they watch daily, which is the Jews being removed from their houses by force, deprived from their possessions. How come they were okay watching that? It's because of stupidity. Stupidity enables evil. Because they think, okay, they might know what they're doing, or you know what I mean? So instead of trying to find God by yourself, you rather go 1 hour a week to the church and let the priest tells you who God is. Because you were lazy to actually go through the search yourself. So this is stupidity. It's different than ignorance. But we came here through compassion. Compassion is something that is very important. It has to be cultivated because more and more, because of stupidity, we are forgetting about compassion. And compassion is a tool of evolution. It's not kumbaya, it's not being nice. So mushin, it means emptiness, void, the feeling of emptiness. Shin, mu means void. Empty, you think about something like a room that has nothing in. But a room that has nothing in is something. So this mu means void. So mushin and shunyata in Sanskrit is the same thing. So that's what you have to pursue mentally when you're fighting. When you pursue that, your technique becomes this mirror. It's reflecting who is attacking you. So I don't have feelings towards my enemy. I'm just trying to defend myself. The sword, Katsujinken, the sword that brings life. That sword can kill the person, but it's not by my decision. There's this story about the samurai, because during the war, one daimyo, one feudal lord who killed the other, and then all the samurai that didn't commit harakiri or seppuku would go astray, and that's how you have the ronin, the samurai without a master, was like going to Japan like a beggar or something like that. So one of this samurai lost his master, his daimyo, and he said, I'm going to dedicate my life to avenge my master's murder. And he spent 20 years until he found the guy that killed his master. He cornered the guy, and he's about to take his sword to kill him, and the guy spits on his face. He put back the sword and said, not like that. Turned his back and left. Why is that? Because if I killed him after he spat on my face, I would be angry. It wouldn't be mushin. And that's wrong. That wouldn't be a vengeance, a pure vengeance, revenge against the guy. In his sense, it would be something motivated by rage. And that's not mushin. So again, for that you need obviously the repetition of the techniques. You need to understand, you need to have the principles in you, because that's the only way you can remember something. Your body can remember something if you practice. The procedural consolidation, high volume repetition, transfer skill execution to automatic procedure systems. So you have all the bases. That's why when you get to the black belt, it's like you learn all the letters and now you start putting the words together. Fits posture stage, cognitive, associated, autonomous. When you have all that information, it's easy for your body to do it by itself. And I told you the story about Istanbul in Turkey it happened to me. Overcoming choking. Under threat, working memory is flooded by fear. Only fully automated skills survive. So it's a lot easier. That's why Shinken Shobu is so important. Because if you train all conditions we have here at the dojo, even if we train with the maximum reality, being safe but with maximum reality, the moment you face the real deal, the real situation, you're going to have a lot of emotions, adrenaline. A lot of things are going to make it very difficult. So if you never had that conflict, that fear, that anxiety, that stress of Shinken Shobu, you have no chance when the thing gets real. So you understand how important and how spiritual that is? That's Katsujinken, that's not Satsujinken. That's the sword that gives life. But you need Shinken Shobu. You need to overcome fear. But for that you need to practice fear. You have to practice overcoming fear the best way you can. And that's Shinken Shobu. And then, of course, when you reach Mushin, you go to the next stage of Aikido, which is called Takemusu Aiki. Takemusu Aiki, you have no longer Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, Shihonage, Kotegaeshi. Your body creates something else. It's formless. Okay? So that's what O-Sensei called Takemusu Aiki. Is the creativity of Aiki. The dual myth of modern Aikido. You have one faction saying, okay, technique without consciousness. Dojo rehearsing forms with archaeological precision, while dismissing O-Sensei's spiritual explanation as quaint period decoration. That the majority of dojos, unfortunately, that's what they do. They just repeat the gymnastics, the choreography, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And again, as I said, I'm not saying that has no benefit. That has some benefits. But that's not O-Sensei's Aikido. In faction 2, consciousness without the sword. Practitioners adopting the language of peace while eliminating all martial adversity, creating moving meditation devoid of realistic test, is also wrong. So again, that's two extremes. We're supposed to find harmony of Aikido. So we have to understand that Aikido is both. Is a real fighting, real self-defense, as close as reality you can, and the spiritual part, the philosophical part, the energy part, which is we're going to talk in another opportunity, the key. We talk about the philosophy a little bit here, but we have to apply that. I have to show you how to apply that. So the synthesis is understanding O-Sensei requires holding both halves simultaneously. The rigorous martial warrior and the spiritual mystic. So this is Aikido. The real warrior and the mystic combined in a constructive way. According to him, not according to me. The goal, O-Sensei used to say this, Masagatsu Agatsu. And you can add Katsu Hayabi. Masagatsu Agatsu means the goal in the end is not winning against your enemy, is winning against yourself. So your goal in the end, ultimate goal, okay, and that's why the people don't understand. Say, no, but why do I have to fight if I'm just have to overcome my own flaws? Because that's the metal. You cannot say, no, you know what? I want to go straight to there. Like, no, you can't. It's like being born and wanting to run. No, you have to crawl, you have to walk. Although some people, I didn't crawl, I walked directly. My mother thought I was slow or something. But one day I was sitting on the beach and I decided to stand and walk. God knows. But you know, the right process for normal people is crawl, walk, and run. You cannot say, no, I want to go straight to running and I want to be fast. No, you have to go step by step. That's why you cannot have a true victory against yourself before mastering the basis without following the protocol. Well, maybe you can with another thing, but I'm talking about Aikido. The methodology is built this way. So that Masagatsu Akatsu, Katsu Hayabi, come from the Kojiki, which is the primordial book of Shinto. It was a deity, and the name of the deity was Masagatsu Akatsu Katsu Hayabi Ame no Oshiho Mimi no Mikoto. By restoring the spiritual operating system of Aikido through history, science, and practice, we transform physical training into a path to self-victory. So that's the goal. Thank you very much.